Amazing. Well, hello and welcome back to Around the Museum with Joe and Diane, where we've moved on just a little bit and we'll get to the proper wandering stages in the next episode or two. But during our time here at the museum, we've been in here for about 1.5 years now. And before then, John had been travelling to the UK for 20 plus years, and we've been collecting stuff, and they was kind of scattered all throughout the country. And so over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, we've been travelling around, and you've been over a few times and helped, and I've been particularly moving around and trying to collate all of this collection together, as well as my own collection. And we've brought stuff over from Norfolk and Scotland and London and Manchester and everywhere.
Anyway, now that we have a proper base,
now we have a proper base. So a lot of the last little while has been sorting stuff out and organising. And we'd gone up to Manchester and collected most of John's stuff, but I got a call from our representative up there who said, "Oh, you've left one of John Mackay's old bags of props. Can you come and pick it up?" And he said, "I'll stick it outside of your big old letters, right, for Joseph Hubbard to collect." And anyway, I got it. I had no idea what it was, and picked up the bag and opened it up, and inside were all of these models of developing fetus, and we'll talk about what a fetus means and what it is in a little bit. But all the way from very, very young, all the way down at 4 weeks down here, all the way up to 20 weeks, with really quite spectacular models of you can pull the baby out and look and see. And so it was a part, I believe, a program that John had done on life before birth and abortion and that kind of stuff. And we've actually produced a documentary on abortion a number of years ago.
Yes, it was one of the first that we made.
Yes, and so it's not a topic that we shy away from. And just as this program will mention abortion, but this episode is not about abortion. We want to talk about design.
Yes.
And we want to talk about the incredible beauty that there is in design, which actually isn't incredible at all. We do know who we're going to be crediting, and it is the designer who is Jesus Christ. So that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. We're going to go through and have a little bit of talk about life before birth, about design, and about the amazing reproductive system in the sense of pregnancy and human development. So, Diane, just tell us, what are we looking at down here on this one, the youngest one here, 4 weeks old?
Yes, this is a model of a human fetus, or it's really still at an embryo stage, 4 weeks after fertilization. And you can see here is the developing embryo, and around that are a number of supportive and protective layers. And these bits here that seem to be sticking into the wall of the uterus, which is this whole structure here, is the forming placenta. And that's a really important organ because that is what is going to supply the baby with nutrients, but also take away the waste products and supply it with oxygen and take away the carbon dioxide. So it is a spectacularly brilliant organ because it acts as a pre-digestive system in that the nutrients are delivered all ready to go.
And that comes from the mother's blood.
That comes from the mother's blood. And it also acts as a kidney because it removes the waste products. And it also acts as its lung because it supplies it with oxygen and takes away the carbon dioxide. Now, it doesn't look like any of those particular organs, but it fills in for those until the baby develops its own structures, which have to be ready to go as soon as it's born, up the other end there. Yes.
Now, you use the term fetus and embryo.
Yes.
So what do those terms mean? Because they're often used as a way of distancing or creating a seeming distance between the concept of the baby human and whatever is now developing in the womb. So what do those terms, fetus and embryo, mean?
Yes. They're just terms to describe the level of development. Now, a human being is a human being from conception. We all start out life as one big round cell and with no obvious organs or structures, but we are fully human then because we are formed from the mother's ovum, so a mother's egg, and a human sperm from the father. So those two things are fully human. when they are combined. So when fertilization happens, you have one big round cell with genetic information from the mother and from the father, fully human. So there is no stage in your life when you were not human.
Okay, so just backpedaling a little bit here, back to the sort of the egg and the sperm concept.
Yes.
Now, the egg is not a human because it doesn't contain all the information to be a human, and neither is the sperm.
No.
But it's because you have this wonderful process where you have, obviously, we talk about things like cell division, we can talk about mitosis and meiosis and the sort of these biological terms which refer to cell division, whether it's a exact duplication of a cell or whether it's one that's been specifically designed with in effect, a random mixture of genetic information to be able to pass on to the offspring. But when you're dealing with just the egg or just the sperm, you're not dealing with a human being, a complete human being.
No, those are products of the human body, but they are not an entire human being.
And what I find fascinating, just as a side point, is that when that baby is in the womb, if it is a female, that female contains all the eggs that she will have for the rest of her life.
Yes,
and
once the ovary has developed.
Once the ovary is developed, but this is still developing in the womb, and so it's all still inside at that point, which I think is just mind blowing when you think about it.
It is mind blowing, isn't it?
She's the mother is carrying her grandchildren's. Potential grandchildren's DNA inside of her when she's pregnant.
The future generations.
It's just mind-blowing. But anyway, so going back to saying, you've got your egg and you've got your sperm. These are not human beings. They contain human genetic information, but they do not contain the complete code for human life. You couldn't just take an egg and develop it into a human. You couldn't just take a sperm and develop it into a human. But once it comes together, not only do you have all the genetic information there for human life, so now you do have a complete human information, but what happens the moment that egg and sperm start coming together?
Well, then you have what's called conception. So that is when your life begins. Your life begins at conception.
And it's at that point that the growth begins to happen. The patterns that we would recognise scientifically as life actually begins to do. Things which aren't there in the egg and the sperm on their own.
That's right. So what happens is that the two lots of genetic information combine to make one cell nucleus, which is the functioning genetic information package that's in all living cells, and then that will then divide and produce more and more living cells. So you start off as one round cell, that will then divide into a whole lot of little round cells, which are all much the same, but eventually they will start developing into different functioning cells. Now, the first division of labour, as it were, or the division of function, is to work out which cells are going to become the actual embryo itself or the coverings. So there's that division, first of all. And then within the embryo itself, and this is the term embryo refers to the process where you go from undifferentiated cells, in other words, cells that just are round, obviously functioning, but not distinctive cells, to cells that have a specific function. So whether they become a muscle cell, a skin cell, a nerve cell, a liver cell, or something like that. That process starts.
And this is all happening within a few days of
this
conception.
starts to happen within a few days, so that by the time you get to this stage, which is 4 weeks, you have the beginning, you have identifiable body organs. Now, they've still got a long way to go.
Oh, of course,
but they are identifiably differentiated structures that you can tell, yes, that piece is a developing heart, that bit's developing lung, this bit's developing muscle. So that process starts straight away, which means that genetic information that was put together when the first cell was formed is starting to be read. In other words, the information is starting to be picked out by different types of cell and used. So that for those functions. So the ones that find themselves in a place where you need to develop muscle cells, the genetic information that is needed to make contractile elements will start being developed. And so in the embryonic stage, that's what you've got, is the baby is forming. In other words, the body plan is forming and all the different organs are formed. When you get to the next stage, where you go from being an embryo to being a fetus...
And so this is now at about 8 weeks.
Yes. You have identifiable organs and body structures like limbs. You can see that you've got
little legs
arms
and
and legs. You can even see an ear starting to form here. You can see some facial features starting to form. Right. So there's a lot of development still to grow, but you've also got growth of the individual organs and maturation. They go from being able to do the complicated functions that the body organs are going to have to go to do, so that when the baby is born, it's ready to go.
And going back to I like how this is a reference to medically a fetus, which is just a Latin word meaning baby, meaning offspring, meaning young one, right? So it can be used synonymously with baby. It can be used synonymously with offspring, and so we use it in medical terms to refer to a certain point or a certain era of development within the womb, but it by no means diminishes the humanity of that offspring, of that child. We are still dealing with a baby.
Continuous process from conception to birth.
Yes, exactly. And so now we're coming up, so now we're starting to get this kind of sort of bubbly looking sort of thing by the time we get up to this point.
That's the placenta growing. So,
so that has to grow as the baby grows.
It has to grow as the baby grows. It's quite large by the time you get to the end stage there. And so it has to provide the baby with all the nutrients that it needs, all the oxygen it needs, and take away all of the waste products.
And I remember actually for one of my siblings' births, because my mum had home births, right? So they had the midwives come out, and I remember afterwards, I wasn't there to witness the actual birth, but afterwards, and Mum was there on the safe holding baby, and we'd come down, right, and the placenta had just been passed, and they'd just clamped it and cut it after a bit of time and allowing the blood to sort of flow through everything. And they had the midwife there, but also a student midwife.
Yes.
And I was just starting to ask some questions, and the student midwife sat down on the floor with me and took out the placenta, turned it, because it sort of came out inside out, and turned it back in and showed me where the baby would be and how it would all do and which parts, and then showed me the umbilical cord and the different nerves and the veins and how it all kind of, and the arteries and how it all fit together. It's just fascinating and astonishing. We'll talk a little bit more about the placenta a little later when it comes to the actual birth and how it has to shut off all the arteries and everything. But we're now at 12 weeks rather, of development here. And what's going on in the mother's body at this point? Because these are all quite small. By this point, we're now starting to deal with quite a large baby now inside the womb. So what kind of changes is the mother's body going through?
Yes, well, this is between here and here are the times when the woman becomes aware that she really is pregnant. Now, we live in the age where if you think you're pregnant, you go down to the chemist and buy a U-Butte pregnancy test and go away and with your little kit. You couldn't do that back in ancient times, or even a couple of 100 years ago. So it wasn't until you started to get some hormonal changes and you actually had sort of a physical mass that could be felt in the pelvis. Baby bump. That you really knew that you were pregnant, as well as the normal reproductive, the 4-week cycle stopping. And you would certainly wait for more than just one cycle stopping before you could be really sure, because there's a bit of
so you are kind of dealing with the sort of 8 to 12 weeks kind of thing in order to see that
that's right.
You've got a baby. And so, so now it's developing, and it's developing at an astonishing rate. The heart started beating a long time ago, but now we've got discernible discernible features. You can see the organs coming together. You'd be doing scans and being able to see the baby's development at this point. And we're starting to even get at this point personalities in the baby, facial features, and so on and so forth at this kind of point.
Oh yes, they actually react to things like the hearing has developed. They can recognise their mother's voice, and you actually see changes in the facial features when they hear their mother's voice, or they can even hear music and things like that.
And so that bond between baby and mother is being developed, not just because it is inside the mother, but because you are now able to hear and distinguish between light and dark. Is that right? In terms of, so sight is there in a sense, and you'll be able to almost communicate. Is this, at what point in this stage would you start to sort of see babies kicking and stuff like that?
Well, mothers feel that now.
Well, yes,
in the first pregnancy, they might think that it's just wind, but then come to develop that. But yes, you feel movement. Yes.
So we're moving our way up now. We're now on to 16 weeks. So that's actually 12 to 16 weeks. That's quite a significant growth and change, and we're at the point in this model where we can actually lift the baby out. And there's your umbilical cord, which is just an astonishing piece of design in itself.
Oh, absolutely staggering, and the changes that have to happen in the blood circulation as a baby is born are just an amazing plan and purpose, because when that is cut, the baby's own lungs have to immediately take over the provision of oxygen and the removal of carbon dioxide. And the blood flow through the heart has to instantly change as well, because when the baby is still in its mother's womb, of course, this is bringing the oxygenated blood, in other words, the fresh blood, as it were, into the baby's heart, and that will flow up into the right side of the heart. Now, when you're an adult, or even when you've been born, the blood from the right side of the heart is meant to go to the lungs and then come back to the left side, because that's where it's going to get oxygenated. But this is already oxygenated, so there's actually a little bypass in the heart to send it out to the body tissues, because it doesn't need to go to the lungs. But as soon as you're born, that blood has to go to the lungs, and there is an amazing shift.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, of course, with our babies, this would be an umbilical cord which is cut. It's recommended that you let the blood flow for a little bit and then you cut it, and it has to recognise that cutting and being able to kickstart everything else straight away. And in the animal kingdom, you'd often have the mother that would chew through this or whatever. But it's the same with animals as well, the placental mammals. It's just astonishing how would something like this evolve?
Well, it couldn't.
You've only got one chance.
That's right. You've got to get it right first time.
Yeah, and otherwise that's it. It's gone, and it's and it's the same if we just jump ahead a little bit and get to this is at age 20 weeks, which is kind of your first sort of we've still got another we're sort of just over halfway really, 20 weeks of development. You're sort of looking at about 24 weeks of pregnancy time, counting from the last cycle. So this is about the earliest that your sort of viable birth and very early birth would be able to survive. But
with modern technology,
exactly. Certainly not natural. We're sort of only just over halfway there. But when it comes to something a bit more developed, when it gets to eventually to birthing, obviously baby comes out, but then placenta comes out, and placenta, which you can see here's your placenta, like you say, it's that sort of lifeline for the baby, doing all that job. At this point, once the baby is out, the placenta then rips off and comes out, and you're attached to, this is now the main connection point between baby and mother. This is where everything goes through, arteries, veins, the lot, and it just gets ripped out. And so what does the mother's body then have to do at that point that it gets ripped out as it starts to
Well, you've got a great big raw surface there, but that will contract and close off all of those blood vessels.
And that has to happen.
That has to happen straight away.
Otherwise, you'd bleed to death.
Yes, and in this fallen world, women did if that process was disrupted. But under normal circumstances, all of this region here, that all just contracts down very tightly, and will close off all of those blood vessels.
But again, you've only got one chance at this.
Yeah, yes, you have to get it right straight away.
Straight away. In other words, you couldn't have a slow, gradual, step-by-step evolution up to producing a placenta.
Yes.
It would need to be designed perfectly for its purpose, not just to sustain baby, but for when that purpose is finished, i.e. baby is born, it can dispose of itself and can shut off those arteries and veins in an instant before you end up bleeding to death, because you can't lose a lot of blood before you start really seriously suffering the consequences of it. It really is true when it says in scriptures that the life is in the blood, as it says in Genesis chapter 9. So it's just astonishing when you think of it this way. So now we've moved right up now to sort of just around the 20 week mark, and we now have our baby. You can see how everything has just kind of grown with it. Even the umbilical cord itself has grown with it as well. And so we're now looking at what is effectively a fully developed human being. It just needs filling out and growth, and like you say, sort of that maturing stage.
Yes, that's right. So you've gone from something that started out life as one single round cell, but all the genetic information in order to make all the body structures and organs was already there. And what we've got is the filling out of that, or the the opening up of that genetic information. It's being retrieved and used, and just like the instructions that you have for any man-made structure. If you were to write out all of the instructions to build this building, including making the bricks and designing the window, masses of information. So we all start out life with masses of information, and it has to be there in order for you to get to this stage, and that's only the beginning of your earthly life.
And like you say, this filling out and maturing, this maturation, doesn't finish when you're born.
No.
It carries on. It's not like, you're not a human in the womb. When you're born, you're now fully mature and completely here, and that's it. No, that process just carries on. It's just carrying on outside of the womb. Up until you think of going through your newborn stage, and you're up into your infant, into your toddler, and then onwards into young child, into adulthood. This is a continual process up to adulthood.
Oh yes. The age of full physiological maturation, in other words, when all the growth and maturation processes are complete, that doesn't happen until sort of the mid to late 20s. And I'm sorry to say, but after that, it's downhill all the way. So, my apologies to all of those I have just pushed over the hill, but I'm a fair way down it.
But the argument that you couldn't consider this to be a separate being or separate life because it isn't matured yet just doesn't work, because then nobody's a human being until they're 25.
That's right. When are you going to draw the line?
And it's the same for this baby couldn't survive without its mother, therefore it can't be a fully. Well, the baby outside of the womb can't survive very long without its mother either. Or at least somebody it can't survive on its own anyway. You need to care for it. So really, all the arguments about this baby not being a separate life really falls down every single time, and it goes back to that point that we made earlier, which is life begins at conception. When you have all the genetic material together, and it starts acting upon that genetic material as a living being, as in beginning that growth and maturation process, which happens immediately at conception.
Yes. When you are conceived, you are a unique human being because you are different from your mother and from your father.
Because you get genetic information from both.
From both, that's right, and even from your siblings. And even if you're an identical twin, there are processes called epigenetics which determine which particular genes get activated at which particular time, and that's quite a subtle process that happens during maturation. So even though identical twins do start out with exactly the same genetic information, How it gets applied is not precisely the same. And any parents of identical twins will tell you they still have their own personalities.
Yeah.
And that happens during the development of their brain, and of course it happens after they're born, and everyone has slightly separate experiences to everyone else, even if you do live in the same household and have the same upbringing. So every individual is
still
unique.
A maturation which is unique. It's still a maturation that continues not only inside the womb but outside of the womb, and it's this whole journey that we're on. So human from conception, human life, baby from conception, all the way up to your sort of adulthood. So there we go. So it really does go back to that as the psalmist said, being knit together in the womb, because we are the only beings that were made in the image of God. The only ones that Jesus, who made us together out of the dirt, who came down and said, let the Godhead make man in our own image, and he made them male and he made them female. So just briefly, Diane, to just say that, when does this male and female determination begin?
That happens right at the very beginning, when we're still just that one big round cell. That is determined then. You are male and female right from conception. So we need to remember that human beings are body, soul and spirit. So when we are determining whether something is fully human, you need to take into all of those things into account. You need to look at everybody as body, soul and spirit. You cannot judge human beings simply by their body alone, by their physical structure. And that applies right from conception to birth and beyond.
So human beings made in the image of God from the very beginning. Body, soul, spirit, male or female, determined from the beginning. Human life begins at conception, and we have incredibly remarkable evidence of design throughout the whole of this pregnancy process, from the beginning of conception all the way through to the miracle of birth. And we can praise and glorify our Creator because of it. Be sure to join us next week as we carry on around the museum with Joe and Diane. Be sure to find out more about creation research at creationresearch.net, where you can find things like the creation fact file, and you can sign up to the newsletters as well.
Indeed.
And the creation updates, which are free. And be sure to carry on checking us out on Creation Research TV as well, where you can actually, I believe that abortion program, which Creation Research did a number of years ago, is actually available for free on our YouTube. So you can look that up on our YouTube as well. But be sure to join us next time. Goodbye, God bless, and we will see you next week for another episode of Around the Museum with Joe and Diane. Watch Creation Research TV, a live 24/7 broadcast of everything Creation Research. Available for free on our YouTube channel and through Creation Research Live. Got questions? We've got answers. Check out askjohnmackay.com to see Q&A articles by experts from around the world. See also the creationfactfile.com website for latest evidence news from Creation Research. Be sure to sign up to the Creation Evidence News. Regular updates and news from the world of creation research, science, and the latest evidence for creation. Support creation research through tax-deductible giving in many countries. Find out more at creationresearch.net. Check out Creation Research Live, our all-new streaming service for creation research, with thousands of free resources and access to all of Creation Research's premium documentaries, debates and presentations through a low-cost monthly subscription. Find out more at creationresearch.live. Be sure to join us for Creation Conversations, a weekly live broadcast with the whole Creation Research team, dealing with different topics from creation, evolution and the Bible.